the armed conflict in Anglophone Cameroon. Leaders of the different shades of opinion about the war have honored our invitations to this platform, knowing that our questions are sorted. It has to be that they realize that at Chatnite Africa, we strive to be fair, balanced, and independent. Today, we have one of the mega voices in the armed conflict and the topic, any viable options or it's time to surrender. Mr. Capo Daniel is the president of the Ambazonia People's Rights Advocacy Platform and the commander-in-chief of the Ambazonia Dark Forces. Mr. Capo Daniel, thank you for accepting our invitation to come on Chatnite Africa.
Thank you, Mr. Nchamukong, for having me. It's my pleasure.
7 years into the conflict, is the life of the people of the Southwest and Northwest regions better or worse?
That is an opening tough one. I think the life of our people, the humanitarian crisis is even worse than when it was declared by the United Nations. We have increasing people who are moving across the border to Nigeria. We have had incidents in Abuja, refugee camp in Nigeria, that have involved the Nigerian police and state authorities. We have had a cutback in United Nations United Nations refugee agencies support to our refugees. They have less and less assistance, financial assistance and food assistance. And also now we are having problems with their schooling in Nigeria. Our IDPs have, for the most part, been able to return home because the wave of IDPs that went into Cameroon, into the French-speaking parts of Cameroon, were largely as a result of our education policy. That policy had been reversed, I think, 2 years ago, and most of our IDPs are back home, but still largely not in enclave areas where they have still been arson attacks by the Cameroon military. So our people are worse off today, and that is not surprising because the war is still ongoing. So there is still darkness before any light can come. So it's unfortunate that my answer is that things are worse today than it was before the beginning of this conflict.
Mr. Capo Daniel, until recently, you were the defense chief of Dr. Ayaba Cho, therefore his right-hand man. You now are sworn enemies. What happened?
Yeah, I want just to say, just for the record, before being the deputy defense chief of Dr. Cho's ADF, I was also the spokesperson of the AGOFC. And before that, I was the ambassador of Seseko Ayok Stabi's IG in Asia and Middle East. I've saved basically most of the Ambazonian factions in this liberation struggle before this moment. And we had a diversion during the Canadian pre-talks, which I initially led the delegation of the AGOFC, and I was replaced in that role without any justification. And our diversion in terms of the pre-Canada talk led me to resign from that position. And the AGOFC have demonstrated what most Ambazonians have known, that Dr. Cho Ayaba, his means of fighting is engineering bullies on social medias that creates an atmosphere that is very difficult for any reasonable debates to happen in our social space, and that is a problem we have been having in this Ambazonian struggle for quite some time now.
We love Chatnite Africa.
Mr. Capo Daniel, when you were his deputy defense chief, that's Mr. Ayaba Cho's deputy defense chief, it's fair to say you participated in the decisions to impose lockdowns, the blockade of Momo Division and some other roads in the Northwest region, what you call the liberation tax also. Is that correct? Is it fair to say you're part of that decision-making body?
Yes, I was not just part. When it comes to the liberation tax, I can say I was the father. It was my conception. And in terms of lockdowns and most of those post-shore in ground zero decisions that were made of the Ague of Sea, both those that were against some lockdowns and those that were calling for lockdowns, some of those decisions were made by me. Some were made in consultation with me by our forces and my comrade within the Ague of Sea and the ADF. So that is correct.
You have acknowledged at the beginning of this broadcast that people are worse off today than they were before 2016/17. Do you take responsibility for the current pain and suffering that people are going through?
Yes, I do take responsibility, and I take that responsibility very seriously and very personal. Because as a young man who have gone through the discrimination in Cameroon as an Anglophone, who organized the protest in 1999 in the University of Nchamukong, when I came to abroad here and this issue started back home, I actively participated in pushing the policies of the consortium, the SCACUF. I've been a very active activist, and I have taken that responsibility. So definitely I'm responsible. So it is my responsibility to continue the fight, to represent those who are alive, who have committed to this struggle, and those who have even paid the ultimate price to fight for the right of self-determination for the people of the former British Southern Cameroons, or the English-speaking
When
parts
you
of,
made the decisions to impose lockdowns, blockades, and so on, liberation tax, did you think about the downstream consequences for the people? Were the people taken into account, or is it just about what you have to do and it must be done?
You must know that I was also a very strong critic of the whole issue of lockdown. I've been very critical of lockdown, excessive lockdowns, especially in the past 3 years, which was largely called by Chris Anu and Sako Ikome. And I've been very critical about those lockdowns, but I have also called for some lockdowns. For example, when the Cameroon SDO in Bamenda banned bike from roaming around Bamenda, I did call for a lockdown, which was for 2 days, to send a message to them and also to galvanize the other civil society factions around the plight of the bike people. And that was very short-lived. It was very popular and it was accepted by our people. There have been some excessive use of lockdown, both as a show of force and sometimes being manipulated by certain forces that are not so obvious to a regular person or a regular journalist like yourself. There have been, this first half of this year, we have 3 major lockdowns, some which have been the lockdown in towards Com area there, from Babanki up to Com area. We have also had, I think, 6 months lockdown now to Bengui Bamenda Road, which is very problematic, which I'm opposed to that lockdown. We also had the lockdown in Dop by General Saigon of Sako, which I led the campaign against that lockdown. The road was reopened. The roadblock in the lockdown of the road in to Fundong have been reopened by General Nyi, and the United Forces in Boyo. I had been engaged with them to make sure that that roadblock was uplifted as soon as the reason for that roadblock ceased to exist.
I get your point. Mr. Capo Daniel, what is more important to you, the means to an end, which is independence, or the end, regardless of how you do it, what you do to get there?
The end is more important, and I think the means can actually determine the end. If you have a wrong means, you end up with something that you don't like. So, but I must still insist to you that, for example, the roadblock that was the lockdown in Babanki to Fundong was as a result of Cameroon military operations in Babanki and in Com that resulted to the burning alive of one of the Queen Mother in Minjang. So our forces thought it necessary to stop circulation of civilian vehicles in that road in order to interfere in Cameroon military operation. That was a justified roadblock. The current roadblock in Bangui Road that is being enforced by the ADF have not been justified to our public. And from my communication with the soldiers from Ground Zero, there is no legitimate reason to have that roadblock for over 6 months. One of the women who have expressed his opposition to that roadblocks is the mother of Mancho BBC. She's a farmer. She's a struggling mother that most of her family have been affected directly by this crisis. And today she cannot go to her farm to harvest Njama because the ADF forces have blocked that road unnecessarily. That road block should be removed. Dr. Ayaba Chua, I just listened to your interview with Dr. Chua Ayaba. He acknowledged that he is far away from Ground Zero. He's not probably very informed about what is happening there, but it is his responsibility to make sure that soldiers that claim to be under his control do not carry out unexplained excesses like this that affects the livelihood to our people and only exacerbate the humanitarian situation. Those are the type of things that can put Ambazonian self-determination at risk. It should stop. That road should be reopened.
We love Chatnite Africa.
And my name is Divine Nchamukong. I am anchoring this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. My guest is Mr. Capo Daniel, who is the president of the Ambazonia People's Rights Advocacy Platform and the commander-in-chief of the Ambazonia Dark Forces. When you impose the liberation tax or lockdowns and so on, you remember during the American, what triggered the American War of Independence was what became no taxation without representation. How do you tax people when they have absolutely no say to how that money is used? Mr. Capo Daniel, that doesn't sound to me like liberation. It sounds more like oppression.
Yes, this is what we have to know. To run a war, you need support from the population you are fighting for. A soldier do not go to war on his own pocket. They have been relying on donation from our community and also from the diaspora to support the armed resistance. And when I brought up this issue about the liberation tax, it was specifically to address certain excesses that were affecting our population. We had circumstances in Bamenda where you have one camp who come and demand money for support from a business owner. The next morning, another camp will come and ask the same money from the same person. And in terms of road construction, there were some strategic roads that we needed to allow the UNDP to construct in Bamenda through the Bamenda Bafusam Road. And you had the contractors were there. They had to pay money to one camp. The next camp is going to come and demand the same money. And so to address this particular challenges, I brought up this issue of a liberation tax, which was a way to harmonize the activities of forces within specific areas to be able to demand support money from wealthy economic operators, and also to demand taxation from Cameroon Francophone-based company. It was never meant to be what the AGOFC is presenting today, asking everybody to collect money from every single person. And I had Lucas Asu, who was speaking, is now the spokesperson of Ayabacho, coming out to say that before you leave one village to the other village, you have to pay your liberation tax or show proof that you have paid your liberation tax. Those type of errors, I think, are made by people who are not in touch with the reality on Ground Zero. They don't know the capacity of our soldiers, and they don't know the unintended consequences of such policies that are out of touch with reality. So I want to make a distinction about the idea of the
problem.
Yeah.
The
issue with the liberation tax, our soldiers can and should collect support money from economic operators that make certain significant amount of money from Ground Zero. If you are constructing a road, you're having a multi-million CFA company, you should be supporting the struggle. There is that expectation. But what we cannot do is telling every single person, irrespective of your income. So those type of error, I believe they are error, but they are being driven by our what have plagued the Ambazonian struggle, which is the fight for dominance. Every Ambazonian leader and faction, instead of fighting to liberate the country, they are more focused about putting policies that will make the soldiers happy and even backfire on the liberation struggle, so long as it seals their position as leadership within the struggle. So those type of errors are bound to come.
Mr. Capo Daniel, that you were the grandfather, you would even say the architect of the liberation tax. But that also opens the door to kidnappings, and liberation tax could become a euphemism, a deodorized word for kidnapping for ransom, sir.
It is. Just like I tell you, what Dr. Chuayaba is preaching. I hope he does not know what is actually happening on ground zero. I'll give you an example. If you ask for liberation tax and for people to pay liberation tax without knowing the capacity of the people, of the soldiers, you tell them everybody should pay liberation tax 10,000. What will happen in ground zero is that it is only those who are close to those boys who are going to be contacted by them to pay this money. And those people will not find it just, because people who live in other areas in Bamenda, like in Kwen or Upstation, are not going to be under the same pressure. They will tend to start snitch on these soldiers and compromise their security. If you give, for example, the liberation tax in terms of the ban for brasseries, I want to make there's a linkage there for ban for brasseries. Now you have soldiers targeting all these high-end snacks bar in Bamenda and their owners. They go and they basically kidnap them and accuse them that they are selling brasseries drinks, and they have to pay a money not to stop selling brasseries drink, but they'll pay money to sell brasseries drink and say, we have to recover the money we have given you. So it is no longer people paying tax, like you say, contemporary tax. You pay tax because you have to support the struggle because of an economic interest. But now people are being targeted because those who are pushing this liberation tax have not done their homework well. They are more obsessed with leadership and dominance and giving the soldiers blank checks that they in turn abuse that blind check. So we have irresponsible leaderships that are not doing their job well. Because I can assure you, when I was working with Dr. Chuayaba, in terms of liberation tax, I ensure that the campaign for liberation tax was balanced such that not people who are not engaged in economic activity will not be taxed. The soldiers will have clear instructions on how to collect this tax and for whom to collect this tax, and to follow up to make sure that people are not being kidnapped in the name of liberation tax. If you are not competent, if you are not responsible, you just sit in your armchair in the diaspora. Like Dr. Chuayaba, when you interview him, he talked about the roadblock in Bangui town, and he admits that he's there in the diaspora. He does not really know what is going on there, and if it is excessive, he's going to stop it. At the same time, he says that this is something I don't want to talk about. So if you are a leader, you must be responsible. If you have declared
both of you started this liberation tax thing. Both of you are not in ground zero. You're in Hong Kong, and Ayabacho is in Norway, if I'm not making a mistake. So both of you are not on the ground. How were you going to make sure that people you control behave themselves, sir?
You have to make sure that any soldier that comes under you or that you claim, you give that soldier this, you carry my name, you give that soldier basically a check. You give that soldier authority and legitimacy. You make sure that that soldier is answerable to you. You have put in place mechanism to monitor what that soldier is doing. You have created a network around that soldier with our community that gives you feedback and that you can act upon it. Just because you are far away from the theater does not mean you don't know what is happening there. I'm very sure that there are people in Douala, Yaoundé that report what is happening back at home without necessarily being on the ground. I'm sure you yourself, you're not in ground zero, but you have very good idea on what is going on there. So it is all about competence. It's all about hard work. Don't claim that you are a leader when you are not in control of what happens. That is my problem.
We'll talk about what happens
yeah.
and control from overseas.
Yes.
Mr. Capo Daniel, listeners, viewers, you are watching Voices of Africa on Chatnite. My name is Divine Nchamukong. At some point in the 90-minute show, we will be opening the phone lines so that you can actually question Mr. Capo Daniel, but we require courtesy. This will not be a corridor of invectives. If that comes, I just cut off the call. Before we continue with Mr. Capo Daniel, we are going to have a little commercial break. Ladies, now welcome Mr. Capo Daniel on the platform. Mr. Capo Daniel, you will agree with me that there have been human rights reports of abuses by both government sources and Ambazonia forces, soldiers, fighters. Are you aware of those reports?
Yes, I am aware of those reports.
And
I think,
are they true or false?
I think some of those reports actually cited me, like the Human Rights Watch. Their report actually cited my person as being very engaged and very responsible in response to actions that were excessive on Ground Zero. As a leader, we have to make sure we are responsible for the conduct of the forces in Ground Zero. We cannot pick and choose when to take glory and when to take responsibility. There have been some actions on Ground Zero that have not been in line or in concert with the expectation of our people, and those actions I have championed their condemnation. There have been actions where we have investigated, we have not had clarity, but where we have had clarity, we have condemned certain actions. There have been, I think you may want to ask example. I can cite you some few examples. The killing of students in Kumba, that is an actions that I strongly condemn. We had investigated that particular incident. It wasn't very clear who authorizes or who instigated those actions against those students in Kumba. But those are things I condemn.
You were the deputy
yes.
defense chief under Ayabacho, meaning that operations will not be carried out without your consent, correct?
Most operations that during my time there, I was informed by most of our commanders. I also initiated certain operations, so I was highly engaged. That does not mean that every single thing that happened on the ground, my hands are there. But there are certain actions there are also other forces in Ground Zero that are not necessarily the ADF. You have forces of the restoration forces that are aligned with the IG in their ideology and their outlook. And you have a lot of Ambazonian self-defense groups that are also solo. They are not under any political leadership. In certain instances, we have to quarantine that particular instance and look into who was responsible, who was engaged. Nevertheless, if any action is carried out by Ambazonian forces, whether they are IG or they are ADF or they are SOCADEF, every Ambazonian leader, every Ambazonian activist have to assume that responsibility to make sure that those actions are right conduct, that are in line with the expectation of our people and in line with international laws. So I do take that responsibility seriously.
Was Miss Florence Ayafo kidnapped and slaughtered within your area, sir?
At the time Florence Ayafo was killed, I was not a member of the ADF. But I was heavily engaged with the ADF, General Efang at that moment, and General Okuru, who were the main soldiers who operated in those areas. I encouraged them to arrest the individuals, to identify the individuals who carried out that particular atrocity. From my investigation, those people, those boys who killed Florence Ayafo were Ambazonian youths who in their zeal were trying to defend their neighborhood from Cameroon excessive that was going on. They had killed.
Did you people apprehend them?
Let me complete my answer.
Okay.
These were youths that were responding to the killing of youth by Cameroon military in Pining and many other places. They picked up weapons to fight for their country. And they were influenced by a love affair that includes Florence Ayafo. Those boys did not carry out that actions because they were trying to fight for Ambazonia. That was just a criminal act that were done by people who had aligned themselves with the Ambazonian struggle, not necessarily an action carried out in the name of Ambazonia. They were bribed to carry out an assassination. They carried out that assassination in a gruesome manner, and they were arrested by Ambazonian forces. For that crime, they confessed that they committed that crime, and it's a very regrettable, and it's something that
what was done to the people who were apprehended by Ambazonia fighters?
Eventually, those boys were banished from Ambazonia, and I wouldn't want to give you where they went to, but from my information, they were arrested. They were detained for a considerable amount of time. They went through some process of rehabilitation, and they were banished away from the territory. Those boys were never part of any active Ambazonian forces.
Are there situations, Mr. Capo Daniel, that people, by your judgment, apprehended have deserved the death punishment?
You mean the boys who committed this act?
Generally, those who go out and do things that are outside without your instructions or violate your instructions.
If in the case of this Ayafo, Florence Ayafo, the forces that arrested, that performed the arrest of these young youths that were in their zeal committed this crime, if I was in charge of that unit, I would have tell those boys to. It's a very complex issue, you know. In our culture, it's acceptable that it's an eye for an eye. If you kill somebody, you should face the ultimate punishment. But during a war period, it is different for soldiers. That's why we have a military tribunal, which is very different from a civil tribunal. So in a military context, if such a crime is conducted by somebody who is in the self-defense, you will not treat it like a civilian because we are at war. The life of that soldier also will save and defend the life of other innocent civilians, which are equally important. So I wouldn't give an answer because I was not in charge. But for somebody who commit the crime, like the dismemberment of Florence Ayafo, I think that person should not see the light of day, and that is not something that we should condone in any shape or form. They should receive the harshest possible punishment.
Your point taken. When you engaged government forces in a firefight for independence, you knew that they were better trained and better equipped. Now, if this is true, how were you to hoist the independence flag on the Prime Minister's lodge in Boya?
Well, I want to first laugh because coming to your interview, I listened to your last interview with Dr. Chuayaba, and he told you that we have hoisted the Ambazonian flag in the Prime Minister lodge already, and that Cameroon army do not exist. That is just to tell you that our struggle that started in 2016, for me as a millennial, that I grew up carrying the Cameroon flag, believing in everything that I was taught in school. For us, this struggle really started in 2016. And we have had people who have extreme views in this struggle. And I want you to make a distinction with the struggle for Ambazonian self-determination and the resistance against Cameroon dominance, which have been going on for a long time. You have the Anglophone movement, you have Gojidinka, you have the SCNC, the All Anglophone Conference 1 and 2, and then you have the consortium. And then now you have a group of extremist ideology in Ambazonia, which I have also indulged myself in, which is the ideology of Dr. Chuayaba, and basically Ebenezer Kwanga initially. Ebenezer Kwanga have a little bit moderated. But for people like Ayabacho, when the ideology of military liberation, that we have to liberate our territory by arms, I think that is not realistic. I think that our fight, now as I'm speaking to you like the president of the Ambazonian People's Rights Advocacy Platform, our fight is a resistance. We are resisting a stronger country. We are fighting for our identity. We are fighting for the right of self-determination. And we do acknowledge that Cameroon is a stronger power, but you should know that when you fight the people that are oppressed, a human spirit will never give up. We are going to fight until we achieve a level of dignity in our existence that we can live with. Right now, our objective is to fight for independence of Ambazonia and to resist Cameroon re-colonization or annexation of Ambazonia until we have an acceptable solution.
We will search Samichia the Dream. Ladies and gentlemen, again, our guest on the platform, Mr. Capo Daniel. Mr. Capo Daniel, again, I want to thank you for accepting to come take questions, independent questions from Chatnite Africa's broadcast, Voices of Africa. We appreciate you. Now, so far, not a single country has allied with you. When I say you plural, the Ambazonia factions. Now, could it be that the argument of the use of force is just not selling, especially when they see an image like the brutal execution of the commissioner, the superintendent of Special Branch in Bamenda? I think that was yesterday.
How could you say that is brutal? Killing is killing, you know. The commissioner was shot as a revenge or reprisal attack for the killing of Pastor Emma, who is a top Ambazonian commander in the Bamenda Brigade, who was killed brutally, and his body, his dead body, was desecrated by the Cameroon military, and our forces carried out that reprisal attack. He's a military man, armed force. He was armed, and his weapon was recovered in that operation. So that is war. War is not a good thing, and we hope we are in a better situation. So, Mr. Nchamukong, I want to get into deep response to that your question about our liberation war not having
but I would like you, sir, to address the question of the argument of force, not the force of argument. Is it selling? Why is it that for 7 years no country is making an alliances with you guys?
That is the biggest tragedy.
You're probably selling a product. You are with a product in the market that's not selling.
Yeah, that is right. I will assure you that we have a very good case. Our people have a very good case of self-determination. We were Category B territory. We have the leading political movement in Cameroon that ushered in the multipartism, John Fundi and the SDF. We have all the intellect. We have Pa Aya for a Supreme Judge. We are highly recognized as intellectuals in Cameroon. But we have lost the advantage of pushing the agenda of our people because the Ambazonian struggle for the Anglophones have been diverted from sound legal foundation. And I want you to give me some time to really explain this so that people should understand where we have went wrong. We are probably, if this struggle is dominated by people who believe in this ideology of military liberation, it is suicidal, because for 7 years this doctrine have failed. We have not had any recognition. We have actually had international partners dismissing the probability of us winning by force. And I'll tell you where we have the problem. This is where we have the problem. Before the 90s, before multipartism, Gojidinka, who is the father of Ambazonia, he brought the name Ambazonia, invoked the restoration law, where Paul Biya passed the law 84/01, which changed the name of the United Republic of Cameroon back to La République du Cameroun. Gojidinka made the argument that Cameroon had seceded from the union that it had with Ambazonia, meaning the former British Southern Cameroon. That was a basis that says that, yes, we came into a union with Cameroon, and now the Cameroon have illegally transformed the name of the country that invoke that recognition that this is an assimilation or an annexation. It was a sound legal basis, and it had attraction even right to the United States that supported an application to the International Criminal Court to establish Cameroon right of sovereignty. In the 90s, 1993, we had the All Anglophone Conference in Buea, and in 1994 in Bamenda, that had a strong constituents of Anglophones that came together and put forth a common position that represent the aspiration, a legitimate aspiration of our people, that asks for constitutional changes in Cameroon. That position also reaffirmed that Cameroon Union exists. Those are real foundations that people recognize. So we were fighting within the context of Cameroon dominating us, discriminating against us as Anglophones, people who come from our territory. That was the basis for that struggle. But right now, that foundation have been diverted from by Dr. Cho Ayaba and what we call the nationalists, who are now saying that we never had a union with Cameroon in the first place. They are dismissing the legal basis for which the Anglophone crisis or the Anglophone problems have always relied on. That legality within the African Union that is recognized within the United Nations organization. And in my interaction with our diplomats around the world, these have been the biggest challenge, that the basis for our argument that because we never had a union treaty with Cameroon, in the first place we are independent, we dismiss anything Cameroon, we say that we are not, we even dismiss Anglophones. Can you imagine? We say that we are not even Anglophones anymore. So we have gone to the extreme, which cannot sell. We have isolated the opposition parties in Cameroon, which we could have allied ourselves with. We have isolated everybody who is reasonable. We have engineered bullies on social media that had made it impossible for us to even debate amongst ourselves. We have become so partisan that it's self-defeating. And now, I think after 7 years, my organization, the Amazonian People's Advocacy Rights Platform, is pushing forward aggressively for an alternative solution that can return our people and froze this conflict. And
we'll come to that. We'll come to that. But
yes.
Somebody's scratching their head and saying, but Mr. Capo Daniel, just last year, they saw you actually teaching people how to use the AK-47. Are you saying all of this now because you are no longer part of Ayabacho's group? What's your answer to that?
My forces have been the most active on the ground. I think about 4 weeks ago, we carried out a huge operation along the Manfe-Bamenda Highway Road. It was a huge successful operation. That was one of the biggest operations we have carried out this year. We also carried out the attack in Balangi, and the attack against this commissioner of police in Bamenda was carried out by ghost fighters that are aligned with my organization. So we are fighting, we are training our soldiers to fight and to resist Cameroon. People should never make this false conclusion that because you are making alternative, it means that you are dropping down your weapons. No, we are just simply going back to strong foundation.
I have a slew of questions.
Yeah, we are just going back to strong foundation that is winnable. You cannot win a war when you are standing on a foundation that do not recognize the rule-based system in the United Nations and the African Union. When you go out there and you say that we were never part of Cameroon, and the African Union recognizes Cameroon as being inclusive with our territory, and the United Nations have the same position, you isolate us and you empowered the regime in Yaoundé.
You are saying, Mr. Capo Daniel, that your group just carried out an operation. We know what that means. That's either laying ambush and killing people. How you going? This is for the purpose of accomplishing a political goal, accomplishing a political outcome. Now, somebody, before I came to interview you, I had been talking about this in social media that you would be my guest today. And I asked people what their opinion about you is. And some people told me you are a terrorist. I'm like, how can you be a terrorist? And some people are calling you a patriot. So I went to the dictionary to find out the meaning, the dictionary, English meaning of terrorism. You say it is, I'm paraphrasing basically, say it is carrying out a violent act to accomplish a political outcome. How does that not describe you, sir?
Which dictionary did you use?
You can Google
Let's
that.
be honest here.
I'll
Google it. I'll Google it and I'll fact check you live on air to show you that you have just say something that is incorrect.
Okay.
Terrorism. This is
All
terrorism. Right. This is Google definition, meaning of terrorism.
Okay.
And I'll read it to you.
It to us.
It says, the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in pursuit of political aims. So this is the dictionary
different from
definition.
What I said?
No, you said that it is using violence to attain a political objective.
Okay.
But the Google, which you have referred me to check, says that it is using unlawful violence, intimidation, especially against civilians. What my organization is doing and what most Ambazonian groups are doing, including the groups of the Egg of Sea, which are now controversial because of the recent outing of Dr. Yabacho, we are targeting Cameroon military personnel, Cameroon armed forces that are engaged in active war against our people. This is an act of self-defense and does not meet the definition of terrorism.
Are you aware of the word blackleg?
Civilians.
Are you aware of the word? Yeah, who are blacklegs? Not
blacklegs.
Military personnel. I think they're civilians.
Yeah. Blacklegs, which I have defined as an activist and as a leader, are people who provide intelligence, or what you call spy, to the Cameroon military to provide them with military targets, be it civilians or camps of Ambazonian fighters. So these are people, in the definition of military targets, spies are active military subject of operation internationally. Even the Geneva Convention and what are these acts that they call it again, recognizes that people who provide military targets, spies, are subject of military operation. You have to
leave that to the audience to look at the semantics and so on. Here is
there have been also some abuse of definition of blacklegs. There are people who have broadly defined blacklegs, which is an area which we don't want to go into. But people should know that for Capo Daniel, for the Ambazonian People's Advocative Platform and the Ambazonian Dark Forces, a blackleg is somebody who is actively providing intelligence that provides military targets to Cameroon army.
You just talked about Geneva Conventions. How would you treat a blackleg, the person you deem to be a blackleg?
Somebody who is a blackleg, who is actively producing, there are a lot of things you can do with a blackleg. Some, you can use them for counterintelligence. You can get somebody who is providing Cameroon intelligence to provide them false information. And some, you have to remove them from the theater, either by banishing them out of the environment, or you keep them in detention until the conflict comes to an end. But there is no way you can introduce somebody who is actively identifying you, providing intelligence on who the Cameroon military should target, to introduce them back in the field. That is an option that you have to eliminate. You cannot return them back into civilian life.
I get that. I'm just saying that, referencing some of the human rights records, which actually laid blames of kidnappings and slaughterings of people because some of the groups deemed that they were blacklegs. I was just asking if you know about that.
This is the problem we have. When you have people like Ayabacho, they come out and they tell you that all CPDM people should not see the light of the day. They get into our camps, we'll kill them. People start confusing, they don't know the definition. We must be very careful with taking responsibility on the conduct or the type of instruction we give through social media. What we say is very, very important. And I will say this to all Ambazonians who are listening to me on Ground Zero. You cannot assign somebody as a blackleg because that person have a different political opinion from you. You can't do that. Just because somebody is a CPDM person does not mean he is actively providing intelligence to the Cameroon military. I'm totally against those who target people with different opinion. We must focus our attack against legitimate targets, which are the Cameroon armed forces and their infrastructure that provide them that support for this active war. And that is what I stand for. And that is what I believe the vast majority of our soldiers stand for. But we have a problem as well there. But to compare with, to make this a focal point, I guess I'm here on the spotlight, but you have to know that the Cameroon military takes no prisoners. They arrest civilians, unarmed civilians, and they kill them, they display their dead body on the street corner.
You can trust that I'm making arrangements to get somebody in the CPDM ranks, top shots in the CPDM ranks, to come here and the intensity of my questioning will be the same. This is very important. These questions of Black leg and killings, very important, because if you're going to make the case in front of the international community and they're having evidence of kidnapping, extortions, summary killings by people who are supposed to be liberators, then you have a problem. Here is something I just got from Ground Zero. Listen to this voice note.
Yes, good evening to you, Mr. Capo Daniel. I want to know the differences you have with Ayabacho. I want to know the differences you have with Ayabacho, and what are the disagreements you have with other fraction of Ambazonia Liberation Forces, please.
Did you get the statement?
Yes, I did.
Okay, can you respond to that, sir?
Yeah, the differences I have with Dr. Chuayaba, they are in two, I can put it in two categories. The one is the immediate differences that made me to resign, which is our differences that emerged during the Canadian pre-talks. We were negotiating with the Cameroon government, facilitated by the Canadian government, in front of international observers that included the United Nations. And we were offered by the Cameroon state ceasefire and release of prisoners as confidence building measures. And we also secured a framework to negotiate without precondition, with independence being the possible outcome. And Dr. Cho Ayaba was of the opinion that we should not accept those conditions for pre-talks, for the negotiation to take place. That differences for me was a breaking point, because I believe that with our capacity on the ground, given such opportunity, we had no rationale not to deny them. So we had that differences that played out from November last year right up to when I resigned. It just attained a position where we were now losing international sympathy. The Cameroon government withdrew from the commitment it made with the Canadians, and we were being seen as the belligerent faction. And I thought that it was a betrayal of what we stood for, what we were fighting for. And the reasons he provided for the positions he took were not reasons that were acceptable for me. So I decided to pursue a path to continue my advocacy for our country in the way that I believe protects our public interest.
What accounts for the Amber balkanization, the balkanization of the Amber leadership? Why should people trust you to lead a Republic of Ambazonia when you can't get to agree on just some basics? You're accusing each other of human rights violations, extortions, embezzlement, kidnapping for ransom, etc. Why should people trust you?
Yeah, first, I'll start from the last question, the last statement you made. I don't accuse Ayabacho for human rights violation. I don't accuse them. I just think that
Ano did.
Chris Ano had instructed the execution of innocent people on Ground Zero. He did that publicly. And he has also confessed publicly of having deal with the Cameroon government that include Sako Ikome. Those things are public record. But in terms of accusing Ambazonian leaders of committing human rights violation on Ground Zero, I just think that they are irresponsible and they are incompetent, because they are partisan. They are giving blank check to soldiers on the ground that facilitates or create the environment where such excesses happens. I don't accuse them for that. And in terms of the other part of your question, what if we cannot really agree on basic things? I think all Ambazonian leaders agree that we want independence for our people as a solution for the Anglophone crisis. We all agree that it is independence the best solution for us. That is a point of agreement. But the divergence we have is the partisanship, that crap mentalities that everybody says that it must only be me. When Chris Ano came to your show, he indicated that he is the leader of the president of Ambazonia. Sakose is the president of Ambazonia. And you pose the question to Ayabacho, who is the leader of who? Ayabacho tell you that Chris Ano is the leader of the IG, he is the leader of the AGOVC, but in terms of functionalism, he is the leader of the liberation struggle. So that is ridiculous. I think that we are all fighting for our people to have the right of self-determination. Everybody lives in its own right. and everybody advocates in their own way.
Have you done things? Have you participated in policy making or done things on your own the last 7 years that you really look back and say, "Ouch! I really should not have done this"?
Yes,
Like
yes, I believe so. One of the things is my divergence from sound legal argument for our case. In the beginning, we were all based on the arguments that were made by Siseko Ayoktabi that were in line with the SCNC, and he had the support of the SCNC, and the vast majority of our population really supported the Siseko Ayoktabi. So I really stood on those principles that we as Anglophones, we have had enough. My mantra was enough is enough. We have had enough of oppression. We have had enough of marginalization, and it is time for us to demand for separation. But the radical side of our struggle, like Ayaba Cho and Ebenezer Kwanga, who insisted that it was military liberation that we must engage. I believe in them because I saw their zeal. I saw what they were doing on the ground to raise an army to fight for our liberation struggle. So I decided to support them, especially when Siseko Ayoktabi was arrested. But when it came to a position where we arrived at the table where we could actually have an opportunity to deal with the root causes of our struggle, they failed to take that opportunity. And for me, that was a breaking point. I realized that Ayaba Cho was actually believing his own propaganda. You know, there is a problem where you don't distinguish between reality and your real chances, and you think that you can hit water out of a rock.
We have some more razor-sharp questions coming.
We love Chatnite Africa.
You love Chatnite Africa? Keep watching. My name is Divine Nchamukong. I am anchoring this broadcast from Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. In just a moment, we will be asking our guest, Mr. Capo Daniel, what the way forward is. Time for us to have to YouTube and search Tikumdi Tilda, and you will have a lot of beautiful Njang songs there. I love to dance Njang. Ladies and gentlemen, this broadcast is also on www.chatniteafrica.net. We're broadcasting to the entire world through our broadcast website, the internet. It's on YouTube, also in high definition. It's on Facebook. It's everywhere, everywhere. Thank you to my social media platforms manager, my tech support chief, Roger Full, who is producing this broadcast live from the beautiful city of Lagos in Nigeria, thousands of miles away from where I am. You see this broadcast platform looking so beautiful. I want to thank Dr. Ilo. If you want to do a platform this beautiful, you want to be a social media content creator, you can contact me and I'll hook you up with Dr. Ilo. He's right here in the DMV area in the United States. I want to thank also Mr. Mumbalingwa, who is my director of transmission. Ladies and gentlemen, join me one more time in welcoming Mr. Capo Daniel. Mr. Capo Daniel, we know the historicity of this problem. We know all that's been happening. Anglophones are not treated right. Injustices. So what's the way forward? Bottom line, if you go to ground zero, people are suffering. If you go to Nigerian villages, the suffering there is incredible. I have had videos of things that make me shed tears. You go to Douala, you see our girls prostituting. You go to Yaoundé, people have abandoned where they used to live in the northwest and southwest villages, and now they're in Yaoundé, they're in Douala, they're everywhere, basically scratching the earth to eat like chicken. What's the way forward? If you ask everybody on ground zero, they don't care about the divisions in the Amber leadership. They don't care about what they want, peace. Mr. Capo Daniel, are you aware of the sufferings that people are going through? If yes, what's the way forward?
Yeah, you cannot ignore the suffering of our people, regardless of who started the war. It's just not possible because those are our blood, those are our kinsmen, and we have that bond as compatriot, people of the Anglophone region,
By the way, the phone line is
former...
open. Hold on. The phone line now is open. You can dial 240-603-7367. 240-603-7367. I do it the third time. 240-603-7367. If you're overseas, you do 001. You can get me through WhatsApp, or you can just type your question and Mr. Capo Daniel will respond. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, you cannot ignore the suffering of our people from the former British Southern Cameroon, Ambazonia, as we aspire to call it, even though for some people they want to take that aspiration as reality. It's an aspiration to become Ambazonian state. You cannot ignore it, regardless of who started this war. And I believe that now is the time for us to come back to strong foundation of legal argument that can bring our people together and garner the type of international support that we can get in order to secure some progress towards the direction of the aspiration of our people. And I totally disagree with you when you say that our people just want peace. Our people do not want the peace of the graveyard that we used to exist before. Our people do not want to go back under La République du Cameroon rule as it were before. Our people definitely wants progress towards their independence. That one I can assure you. And our people are also realistic about our chances of winning this war. And the way forward, if I have to talk about the way forward, I think the way forward is for us to come back to sound judgment and sound legal argument about our narrative and what we want as a people. We have to go back to the All Anglophone Conference, where you had a proper constituents of Ambazonian who really look into the matter of what is going on and had stated unequivocally that we want to remain as one people in our territory, regardless of what Cameroon is saying. We want to remain one. We don't want to be divided northwest and southwest. We want to remain as maintain our our political outlook, and we want to be able to safeguard our ability to become an independent country. My organization have proposed an alternative solution, which is a devaluation, similar to what is happening in England. When the people of Northern Ireland, they could not completely defeat England, but their identity was so precious. They had this concession to stop the war and accept to be a United Kingdom that gives them a chance to become a free and independent Northern Ireland or Scotland through democratic means. So these are concessions that I think we can offer now, having established to Cameroon that Cameroon can no longer govern Ambazonia without consequences.
Let me make sure I understand you very well. You no longer believe in independence by war. Is that correct?
Independence by war, by means of by military liberation, I don't believe it is attainable. We cannot win independence by brute war. That is what I believe in. I believe that we can actually have independence by securing a pathway to independence, just like the people in Northern Ireland and the people in Scotland, they have achieved. Today, they can, through democratic means, have their independence. I have also visited Spain, the Basque region, where they have a similar arrangement. They have their own parliament, they have their own identity, they run their own budget, and concessions like that can enable us to preserve our identity, preserve our territorial integrity, and have a pathway for independence for our people in the future. And I think this is attainable. This is what can have the right attention from the international community that can enable us to even position our country and our people to take advantage of the wind of change that is blowing through Africa. We have seen the collapse of the regime of the Bongos. We have seen the collapse of the regime in Burkina Faso, in Chad. And everybody is praying that this same wind that is blowing through Congo should come next door to Cameroon. And if Paul Biya was to be overthrown tomorrow, are we, the Anglophones, positioned in a way that can attract them to offer some concession? Or they are going to see us like people who just want trouble? Because if our position right now is independent or we all die, then it will not be attracted even to the next leader in Cameroon to look for some concession. I believe if we have this right mindset, and we make sure that the extreme do not dominate our liberation struggle, we will be on the right track to secure progress that can eventually mean independence for our people.
Mr. Capo Daniel, and I honestly, people who have known you until about 4 months ago are wondering whether you've become a political born again. I mean, your ideas are completely 360 degrees turnaround. Why are you talking about this now? Middle of the ground,
you
compromise.
Have to, you are dealing with the life of human beings. You cannot be so cool not to understand or make assessment. We were fighting to liberate by military war. We had transformed our struggle to that faction because Ayabacho dominated our political space after the kidnapping of Seseko Ayoktabi. So the ideology of liberation by military force dominated our liberation struggle. But we have come to a position where the Cameroon state have recognized through the award of the special status that this fight is legitimate. That special status is a recognition that our cause is legitimate. And that also reinforces the call of the tripartite. Paul Biya called for the tripartite talks in the 90s, which is acknowledgement that the job of uniting the former British Southern Cameroon and French Southern Cameroon have not been done. And this does not take away our right of self-determination. In every struggle, when you are fighting, you must at some point assess that, can I win this fight? Especially when it is your own people who are dying. Having given the special status, I think we, the people of Ambazonia, we have to recognize that we are not still dealing with the same regime that used to say that there is no Anglophone crisis. This does not mean that I accept the special status or I think it meets up with our expectation, but I believe it is a starting point. And we have to make some concession in order for us to be viable. Because without this concession, we are self-defeating. The whole idea of independence now or we all die plays into the hands of the regime. Paul Biya has been the biggest benefactor of this Ambazonian struggle. You now have a one-party system. The SDF have been knocked out of the game. We have lost all of our allies. And if we do not have this concession or we do not come back to strong legal foundation to fight for our right of self-determination, Paul Biya will end up winning. The next regime that will emerge in Yaoundé will not have any incentive to engage with the Ambazonian people or the Anglophones.
Since when, Mr. Capo Daniel, did it occur to you that war isn't going to cut it? I
didn't say that war didn't get to cut it. Listen to me.
Suddenly get this awareness.
We actually won because we had Cameroon to discuss about the root causes in our term. That was in Canada. We had a pre-talks. The Cameroon submitted to our strategy to fight, and our rhetoric, our war rhetoric, and our propaganda actually brought Cameroon to the point where they succumbed to international pressure to get into a negotiation without precondition. And at that point, it was in our hands to win or to lose it. And the leadership in the Canadian pre-talks lost it. And we cannot pretend that events didn't happen. In the mindset of the international community, which we expect to sympathize and to pull Cameroon to its senses, they know what happened in Canada. And therefore, we must reassess our position. Even in Ukraine, the Ukrainian government sometimes reassess their progress and think if they can negotiate land for peace. So you should expect that this is a natural process. If for you, it is not normal for a leader to look at the situation around him and say that it is time for us to make some concession in order to best position our people to make progress in their aspiration to become free and self-determination, then I think that the problem will be with you, not with me.
Independence, all of you were screaming, it's in the independence or the highway. How are you going to sell this diplomatic stance to people you have encouraged all along to take up arms and fight for nothing short of independence without looking like a traitor?
You have to understand that my responsibility is for our people. And my ultimate objective is to fight for independence for the Ambazonian people. It comes to a point where you realize that if you lost the war, you will never have any chance to even become independent. I don't want Ambazonians to become like the Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar, where they have been driven away from their homeland. Neither do I want the Ambazonian struggle to become like the struggle of the Tema Tigers, where they become annihilated and their whole ideology was destroyed. I have also studied the lesson from Cameroon history. The Cameroon fight for independence that was led by Ernest Nwanyi ended up in him being killed in Douala, and they become sardinized, what we call sardinized. That means the idea of patriotism in Cameroon was being destroyed by the one-party system, by Amadou Ahidjo, and the corruption that was introduced by Paul Biya. So there is a big danger if we lost this war that our people will be wiped off, the ideology of our nationalism and Ambazonia will be wiped off the face of earth. So for us to preserve our Ambazonianism, our nationalism, it is important for us to realize the times and to realize that it is time for us to have some concession. And
how are you going to sell
Ambazonia
this without looking like a traitor? I'm going to ask you the question again. Have you been in contact with the authorities in Yaoundé? Some people are thinking that it's likely Capo Daniel has taken an envelope.
Yeah, people will always believe that way. But my ultimate responsibility as a leader is about the welfare of our people. I care less about people who make statements without any substantiation. Of course, we know that in that country, people take political positions mainly because they have bribed them or paid them some money. But this is an evolution that took place in front of the eye of everybody. We were in Canada. These differences are real. I've been one of the Ambazonian activists and leaders who have been in bed with our people. I've been in touch with all soldiers. I've worked with all the leaders. I'm a millennial. I'm a young man. And I have been the conscience of our struggle. I initiated our concession for education boycott into community school. I brought in a lot of strategy that have made our struggle to survive and not to be labeled as extremist. And I have come to tell our people that this is me, Capo Daniel, the most credible Ambazonian activist. It is possible to have concessions without being bribed. I'm
Mr.
motivated.
Capo Daniel,
yes.
If middle of the road kind of agreement or compromise is now to you the sweet spot, why did you turn down the invitation to attend the Grand National Dialogue?
At the time of the
Grand case.
Yes, at the time of the Grand National Dialogue, I was approached by the AGC of Cardinal Tumi, and they lobbied me and they told me the importance for us to be represented in that fora. And at that time, I was just an activist that I served the other leaders, and I consulted with Bo Herbert and all the leaders that runs the major organization in Ambazonia. And I thought that I cannot just go there like an activist. I cannot engage with them as an activist. The conditions were not right, and we could not effectively represent our people and their aspiration in that fora, in that platform. And I rejected that invitation, which was the right thing to do. But our position as a struggle, which was dismissive, we were very dismissive that this is a non-brainer, we don't recognize anything that the Cameroon do, was a mistake. That was a mistake. We could address them without being dismissive. Because if you are complaining that there is a problem and somebody is offering solution, even if that solution is not what you want, you should at least acknowledge that, okay, yes, you are acknowledging that there is a problem. But if you can acknowledge it, take the next step. You will be engaging with Cameroon. Because when we are dismissive, Cameroon wins. Paul Biya can turn around and say, these people are not reasonable people. They are people who are obsessed with this abstract idea of independence. So those were mistakes that we made. I believe my mistake was not addressing the Grand National Dialogue. It was not that I should go there. We could not attend that Grand National Dialogue. But we failed to address it. Just like the special status, we have failed to address the special status. We dismissed it and have retained my position. And now I'm engaging the Cameroon government. I'm engaging the Cameroon state on a basis that can preserve human life and work for our people. And you, for all people, should know that this is how the war works. It is only in Cameroon.
I know that. I know that in
Yes,
all wars will end in some form of dialogue. And when you dialogue,
yeah. So when you start thinking that, when you
concessions.
keep on insisting in your question that for people to adjust that suits their people's will and preserve life, that it sounds somehow like betrayal. I think that is intellectually not right. Our people have to know that you yourself, this is what you should know. This is what you should know. You have articulated here that military liberation is not workable. What is the alternative? Should we keep on insisting on military liberation, knowing that it is going to end up with Ambazonia having a total loss? That means you just want our people to lose every preservation of their identity.
Absolutely.
So the alternative is to look for a way that you can preserve what our people want, which is separation, preserving their identity and independence. The best solution we can have now is the type of situation of Northern Ireland and Scotland. It is not the regime's interest. Recently, they have tried to send people in China. Colonel Banque was in China to do diplomatic lobby there with the Sila law firm to see if they can get their hands on me, because the worst nightmare of Pobia is to see Ambazonian rallying the Anglophone population, rallying the opposition party, rallying all these people to come back to fight for their freedom. They want everybody to follow Ayabacho so that they are going to defeat Ambazonia. They want people to follow ideas that are not founded on the principle of international law, that are flawed. We know that politics. If there are people who have received bribes in this struggle, there are people who are insisting on things that cannot work. If there are people who do not care about the suffering of our people, there are people who are insisting on things that are not attainable. We should be very responsible here, Mr. Nchamukong. And I come here knowing that you are one of those people out there who are very reasonable. Your question line is insinuating that reasoning is corruption. No. If there is one person, I've been the most transparent. When Cameroon came to bribe me, they offered 500 million. I record them and I expose them to our people.
We have somebody on the line. We have somebody on the line. Just hold your thought right there. Hello, this is Voices of Africa on Chatnite. Please, your question.
Yes, good evening or good afternoon, Divine.
Good afternoon.
I'm calling from somewhere in Central Africa.
Okay.
I just want to ask 2 questions to Capo Daniel.
Yes, he's listening.
Yes, the first question is, schools are going back. He's preaching peace. He was the war director of Ayabacho wing of the movement. And now he's preaching peace. The war director has given arms and people's parents and children have been killed. This is a war crime. How are you going to justify talking this peace now when people have buried their mother, their father, and their sisters? How is he going to compensate for that? That is the first question.
Yes, go ahead with the second question.
How is he going to compensate? The second question is, schools are going back and there is a ghost town. Yet, they have told us that they are not stopping people from going to school. What is the need for this ghost town now? Please, let me just add one again to tell Capo Daniel that half of the Northwest region is in La République, what they call La République. Are they doing any good to the region, or how are they going to bring these people back? Let us see what happened to the Israelites. Thank you.
Thank you for calling. Yes, you got her questions. What are your answers?
I think she's making a mistake. I'm not calling for the type of peace. I think we have been so enslaved by a system where people do not reason. It is either you are for or you are against. These are false way of thinking, and our people have to get out of that mindset of Cameroon. They should understand something. I am the commander-in-chief of the Ambazonian Dark Forces, the most lethal force on ground zero. We must fight against Cameroon and we must resist the occupation of our territory until our people have the right of self-determination. That is my position. We are fighting against Cameroon. We are in this war to win for our people. My position is not an abandonment of the Ambazonian fight for independence. I'm fighting for independence. And I believe the best way to fight for this independence is to have some concession now and secure a pathway for that independence in the future. So for what she's saying that you are now calling for peace, of course, who does not want peace? Our people need peace. Our people are dying. They need to have that end of hostility. And that is why I'm taking this position to enable us to get there. In terms of schools, there is a false narrative, and I put the blame entirely on Archbishop Andrew Kia, who came out there using his position as the president of the Episcopal chapter in Cameroon to make declaration that parents are afraid to go to school. Who are afraid to go to school? We have reversed the complete boycott of school. We have authorized community schools to open their doors. Presbyterian school, Baptist schools, and Catholic school. It is the Cameroon governor of Bamenda who was banning Presbyterian school and Baptist school from Boyo not to open their doors. We have given schools a reasonable chance for them to open their doors following our guidelines. Do not put on uniform. Show solidarity with those who are fighting in the bushes for your freedom. And do not play Cameroon national anthem. Those conditions are favorable for our children to go to school. The only schools we have banned are Cameroon government schools. The distinction should be made for our people to understand. This change in position, which I champion, have resulted to our people coming back from La République du Cameroon to study amongst us. We have seen a reversal of our refugees from Cameroon. They have all returned back home to study. But you know, there is a lot of manipulation that is going on. Proprietors of schools in Francophone areas who were benefiting from this crisis with our students crossing over the borders, they are now bribing Ambazonian people, engineering people to call for lockdown and to sabotage our school education. Parents should not be afraid of anything. So long as your school comply with our guidelines, send your children to school on Monday. The person who declared this lockdown is General Bitakola, who is in custody. He has been arrested somewhere. I don't want to say it. He lives in Boa. The area where he lives, there is a Cameroon government school going on there. He has not gone to close that school in Matoboto. So he is not somebody who have command and control over areas where he does not control.
I have a question that's just been sent me by text, Mr. Capo Daniel. The question says, you are saying schools should operate under community guidelines spelled out by you, but these schools are going to be taking examinations set by the government of Cameroon. There is a contradiction there, according to the text.
No, there's no contradiction. You can have foreign exams. People in Cameroon take exams that are written, that are set by authorities in England. You can have online classes. You can consider Cameroon exams just like you consider Nigerian exams. Our students...
This idea of middle of the road kind of agreement, are you talking that... How are the other people receiving it, the other leaders of Ambazonia movement receiving it?
The Ambazonia movement have varied positions about education. You have the IG, whose position is that parents should make the decision if the security situation is okay for them. That is just giving a blank check for soldiers to be confused. You have the AGOVC, which have adopted the position of community schools and that schools should open in the way that I've described. But what is more important is the Ambazonian fighters who are on the ground. In Toronto, there was a conference last year organized by the CDN, where you have the forces of General No Pity, the forces of Mad Dog, you have all the forces of Ambazonians who are known were present. We made a resolution that adopted this position that I'm giving to you, that all Ambazonian schools should be converted into community schools, and only Cameroon government schools are banned. That is the policy. Anything else, people should ignore it. These are just the distraction that we have been witnessing in this our struggle. I've sent out video out there. I've called our parents and our teachers. I've personally authorized, I think, over 80% of our community schools. So I'm really in touch with our education community, and I've assured them that General Bitakola is far there in custody somewhere. That's why he's not making videos. Nobody should be afraid of him. It's time for our people to regain their thinking cap.
This broadcast was slated to be 90 minutes. We'll be right back for some closing remarks from you. You are watching Voice Platform. Yes, Mr. June Francis, writing from China, says a quick question for Capo. Why do you opt for a pseudonym, making it difficult for the people who are fighting for you to know who you really are? Is there anything wrong with your real identity? I think the question is, are you a Southern Cameroonian? Are you a Cameroonian? Are you an Ambazonian? I think that's where his question is actually going to.
Of course, I'm born and bred in Ambazonia. I was born in Boya. I grew up in Bamenda. My parents are both from Boom, so I'm pure blue blood Ambazonia. And the thing of studio name, I think, is our culture, and it is also a way for me to identify with our soldiers who are using nicknames, and it's easily identifiable. Here in Hong Kong, people usually use nicknames, even in their name card, because they want to protect their identity for people not to steal their money from their credit card and things like that. I started my activism using nicknames, and that is just how I grew up. I think that is not hiding my real names. Everybody know I'm Dong Emmanuel Ngong. My information, I'm not trying to conceal my identity. My face is out there, everybody can see. So about me using a studio name, is I don't think that is a problem. Even in my profile, I usually will put my proper name there, and I'm not concealing my identity. It's just like Paul in the Bible. His name was Saul. Why did he use the name Paul? So our soldiers, they choose the names, you know, cross and die. They use all these names, General that, General that. I think sometimes it's just our culture. It's part of our culture to use nicknames.
Thank you so much, Mr. Capo Daniel. We could be here till tomorrow. Unfortunately, we have to end at some point. This broadcast is 90 minutes. We have a powerful edition of Family Matters. Next week, it'll either be Thursday or Friday, but I'm going to make the announcements. Thank you so much, Mr. Capo Daniel. I don't know what time it is in Hong Kong now. It should be 1:32 in the morning.
It's 3:30 a.m. here in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And it's my pleasure.
We honestly appreciate you. On Chatnite Africa, we try to not take sides. We throw the questions out. We speak to people, get the questions that they would love to ask you. We've had CPDM stalwarts here, and we had equally very sorted, razor-sharp questions for them. We've had Federalists here. It was no different, and that's why our questions could come sometimes across as aggressive, but that's so that you can explain your points of view to the public, and that's, in our view, holding you accountable. Again, thank you, sir. My regards to your family, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nchamukong.
And this broadcast is going to be, it's on YouTube. You can have your friends watch this on YouTube. On YouTube, it's on www.chatniteafrica.net. Before I go, there's a beautiful thing here that I kept for everyone. It's a track by Eziko SG. He is in Douala. Enjoy it.
There is nothing.
Yeah, that's right. We will get that to you in a moment. That's by Eziko. We cannot take any calls now. Unfortunately, we have to.
There's nothing impossible for you, Lord. Your children are looking up to you with all hope. Prince of Peace, oh, shower us with your peace. Prince of Peace, oh, shower us with your peace. We do pray for peace to reign in our land. We do pray for peace to reign in our land.
And you are watching
pray for peace to reign in our
Voices of Africa.
We do pray for peace to reign in our land. We need peace, oh, because it can come by now. All we need is peace, oh, in our land.
And that's a beautiful Jang song, Jang beat by Eziko SG.
Peace to reign in our land. We pray for peace to reign in our land. We pray for peace to reign.
You can also go on your App Store, Play Store, and download the app for Chatnite Africa. When you have that on your phone, instantly you get connected to all the platforms once we hit the airwaves.
We should try to be forgiving, no matter what.
want to thank everyone for watching the show.
The Boyo Peace and the Development Initiative. A young man in a Lomboy. Where?
And on the show today, we have songs by Samichia. We have Tilda Kumichi. And now we have Eziko SG.
Our education is not stable for our children, which is the first property to our children. No malan retain the fortune, so I line the leapers. Why cases not poor, I nothing to watch. Come Jazaga, Bobby, come Jazaga now.
I want to say that Eziko will be on the show Family Matters on Thursday.
Pray for peace in our land. Nothing will last forever except the word of God. There is always a saying that there is light at the end of the tunnel, Mama. Oh, when the light will come, we will see the light. We need peace. Oh, we need peace. Oh, God send our own Joshua. We need peace. The Northwest Regional Assembly, we should work hard to see that peace should be restored in our land. We pray for peace to reign in our land. We pray for peace to reign in our land. We pray for peace to reign in our land. We pray for peace to reign in our land. We need peace, all we need is peace in our land.
Okay, that's where we wrap up this edition of Voices of Africa. My name is Divine Nchamukong. We will continue to bring you hot shows. We've lined up a lot of hot shows on this platform, and we take no sides. We question and incisively all the guests who come here. If you know someone who is making a difference, regardless of nationality, anywhere on the planet, anybody who is inventing something, anybody who is doing things selflessly that's touching lives, please let us know. We will connect with that person and take their story to the four corners of the planet. Merci à tout le monde. Je vous aime, mais il faut que je parte. I love you, but I've got to go right now. Bye for now.